There is a moment in every chess match when both players realize the game has shifted. Last week in Dubai, that moment happened on a global stage. Taka Kausu sat across from Zimbabwe's President Mnangagwa and asked what he thought was a simple question.
Do you think that Zimbabwe and other African countries get a better deal from Chinese investment than they have with Western powers over the past 150 years?
The answer he got, it wasn't just a response, it was a declaration.
Whether it is relation with the West or the East, what is primarily important is what we ourselves as Zimbabweans are satisfied with. We don't need to please the West or please the East. We please ourselves.
And that single sentence, it reveals something much bigger than one president's answer. So stick with me, because what happened in that room tells you everything about where Africa is heading and why Washington is watching closely. Let me set the scene for you. February 4th, 2026, the World Government Summit in Dubai. You've got political leaders, tech executives, media personalities, all gathered to talk about the future. And on one panel about Africa's political outlook, Taka Kausu is moderating. Sitting with him is President Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe, President Bio of Sierra Leone, President Boko of Botswana. Now, Taka is not there to make small talk. He's testing something, and you need to understand what he's really talking, because it's not what it sounds like on the surface. See, this wasn't journalism, it was strategic framing. Taka asked 3 specific questions, and each one was designed to put these African leaders in a box. Question 1, is China better than the West? Or you're just trading one master for another? Question 2, you kicked out white farmers, your economy collapsed. Was that worth it? Question 3, you saw what happened to Maduro in Venezuela, right? Each question a trap. But here is what made this different. Mnangagwa didn't fall for any of them. And that's where things get interesting. Now, let's break down the first move in this chess game. Taka asked Mnangagwa to contrast Zimbabwe's experience with China versus Western powers. Sounds reasonable, right? Just a comparison. But listen to how he frames it.
Do you think that Zimbabwe and other African countries get a better deal from Chinese investment than they have with Western powers over the past 150 years?
You watched that? Better deal. He's not asking about sovereignty. He's not asking about Africa's strategy. He's asking Mnangagwa to pick a side, to say which side treats Africa better. Now, this is classic framing. In US and European media, you hear this all the time. China is buying Africa. Africa is becoming dependent on Chinese debts. And yeah, there are legitimate questions about debt sustainability and contract terms. But notice what Taka's questions assumes. It assumes Africa has to choose an owner, either Western extraction or Chinese extraction. Those are your only options. Here's what he said.
Whether it is relation with the West or the East, what is primarily important is what we ourselves as Zimbabweans are satisfied with. We don't need to please the West or please the East. We please ourselves.
That's the chess move right there. He didn't answer the question Taka asked. He redefined the entire game. And this is important. This isn't just about Zimbabwe talking. This is a broader African position emerging at these summits. According to trade data, China-Africa trade hit $280 billion in 2023. Now that's real money, real infrastructure projects. But what African leaders are saying now at summits, at BRICS meetings, at AU-EU gatherings, they are done being positioned as clients. They want to negotiate as equals. with China, with the West, with the Gulf, with whoever shows up with a credible offer. And that shift, that's what Taka ran into. But Taka wasn't done. He had a second move ready. And this one was personal. Here's how Taka frames it.
President Mnangagwa, I wonder what lessons you've been in the government of Zimbabwe for decades in various roles, including through a very turbulent period where your predecessor famously kicked out the whites and then the economy tanked and now it's rising again. I wonder if you would summarize the lessons that your country has learned from that experience.
All right, let's unpack that sentence because every word is doing work. That's an emotional frame. It sounds violent, chaotic, racist even. Then the economy tanked. See what he did there? He's collapsing an entire decade of complex economic dynamics into one simple cause and effect story. You touched white property, your economy died. See, let me give you some context. In 2000, Zimbabwe launched fast-track land reform. The government took land from about 4,500 commercial farmers, most of them white, and redistributed it to hundreds of thousands of black Zimbabweans. Now, was the implementation messy? Yeah. Did productivity drop in some farms? Absolutely. Were there cases of violence and mismanagement? Yes, those are documented. But here is what Taka doesn't mention and what Western media often skips. First, that land was taken from black Zimbabweans under colonial rule for generations. The most fertile land belonged to a tiny minority. Second, immediately after land reform, the United States and European Union slapped sanctions on Zimbabwe, not just on individuals, on the entire economy. According to research from the African Security Analysis Organization, US legislation explicitly ties sanctions relief to compensate for white farmers. That's a direct link, land policy and economic punishment. So when Taka says the economy tanked, he is leaving out that Zimbabwe was cut off from international credit, blocked from major markets and isolated diplomatically. Was some of the economic damage self-inflicted? Sure, but sanctions did serious work too. And here is the part that matters. Mnangagwa didn't accept Taka's framing. Listen to how he answered. Land did not belong to a race. That's a direct counter to Taka's racial framing. He's saying this isn't about targeting white people because they are white. This is about correcting historical theft. Then he adds, we seized the land and gave it to our people, so sanctions were imposed on us. He is linking economic collapse not to land reform itself, but to punishment that followed. Now, you can debate whether that's the full picture. You can argue about governance and mismanagement. Those are fair discussions. But what you can't do is pretend that Western sanctions didn't play a major role. And that's exactly what Taka was trying to get Mnangagwa to do. Blame African policy exclusively, while Western pressure goes unmentioned. And Mnangagwa refused. But Taka saved his most interesting question for last. And this one, it wasn't really a question at all. Here's what he said.
What did you think of what happened in Venezuela last month?
You must pay attention to what happens to other heads of state. Now, let me tell you what Taka is referring to. In January 2026, US Special Forces flew into Caracas, extracted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from the presidential palace, flew him to New York to face charges. Now, think about that for a second. They went into a sovereign nation's capital, grabbed a sitting president and airlifted him out. Now, Taka Carlson himself called this what it is: empire behavior. On his show, he said the US is now acting openly as an empire to secure resources and stability. So when Taka asked Mnangagwa, what do you think of what happened in Venezuela? He's not asking for political analysis. He's reminding him, we can do this to presidents who don't cooperate. Zimbabwe is under US sanctions. They have pivoted to China and other non-Western partners. And here is Taka on the global stage in front of cameras, casually mentioning that the US just grabbed another sanctioned, resource-rich president. You know what Mnangagwa did? He dodged it beautifully. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, Venezuela is very far from Zimbabwe. What we read may not reflect reality. We are interested to know why it's happening. Smart. He doesn't condemn the US action. That would of course create diplomatic problems. But he doesn't endorse it either. He creates distance, questions the information, and signals skepticism without crossing a line. Because of course he understands what Turkey was doing, and that brings us to the bigger picture. So let's zoom out and see what this really reveals. What happened in Dubai wasn't just Taka Kausu interviewing African presidents. It was a collision of world views. Taka's questions represented an old model. Africa chooses between West and China. Western property rights are universal. If you defy Washington, there are consequences. Mnangagwa's answers represented a new reality. Africa negotiates with everyone on its own terms. Historical injustice matter in the current policy, and sovereignty means not being lectured about your choices. And this isn't just Zimbabwe. At BRICS summits, at African Union meetings, at these global forums, you are seeing African leaders publicly challenging Western framing. See, they are not saying the West is wrong about everything. They are saying we are not your client's state anymore. We are partners or we are nothing. And the numbers back this up. China-Africa trade, $280 billion. Gulf investment in African infrastructure, growing year over year. India deepening ties. Turkey, Russia, Brazil, everyone's showing up. This is what multipolarity looks like in practice. It's not about Africa choosing China over the West. It's Africa saying, we will work with all of you and we will set the terms. And that's what Taka ran into in Dubai. He asked questions designed to put African leaders into a box. And Mnangagwa walked around the box entirely. Because the old playbook where Western journalists frame questions and African leaders accept the premise, that playbook doesn't work anymore. You see, Africa is not rising to answer Western criticism. It's defining its own story. And for Western policymakers, for investors, for anyone paying attention, that shift has serious implications. Whether it's trade deals, military partnerships, technology transfers, or debt negotiations, Africa has more leverage now than it had decades ago. And that's not a threat, it's just math. More buyers means better prices. More partners means more options. More options means more power. So here is what you should take from this. When you see these kinds of exchanges, whether it's at a summit in Dubai or a trade negotiation in Beijing or a diplomatic meeting in Washington, pay attention to who is setting the frame. Are African leaders being asked to choose sides, or are they being asked what they want? That's the difference between the old world and the new one. And based on what happened in Dubai, the new world is already here. If you got value from this breakdown, drop a comment. Now, before you go, for those who support this work on Patreon and on the YouTube membership, I've prepared something extra. From now hence, I will do same for all our videos. A complete source archive with every link, timestamp, and piece of evidence from this episode. It's yours to look, fact check, and explore. That's one of the ways I give back to the community that makes this channel possible. If you are not on Patreon yet, but you want that level of access, the link is in the description. If you found value in this video, please share it with whoever needs to know about this. If you found value in this video, drop a comment and let me know what you think. I'm Samuel Luis. You are watching Africa Today, and this is the Strategic Lens. See you in my next video. Bye.